things, your addiction to porn and threat of suicide left me uninspired about life. I did not like my job and did not understand why I was working so hard at sustaining something that was distressing me. I pointed out to you that you and I could live comfortably on your salary while the time off will allow me to address what was going on with me internally. I then proceeded to move us to a new apartment that we could afford on your salary, ensured that my brother obtained his Romanian papers so he can fend for himself, and learned a lot about my mother in the process, which kind of cleared things up a bit for me. For I discovered that her trying to kill herself started since she was a teenager, which means that just like me, the source of her distress was her family, and her marriage to my dad was triggering something about her past that she did not want to face. This gave me a new confidence, and I then decided that I wanted to invest in a project that I loved and inspired me. It is during this same period that Cheska has reached out to me and wanted to venture as well in her own business. As she shared her idea with me, I was so excited for her that I decided to invest the $19,000 you and I have agreed to put aside for my business into hers. This created severe argument between us as you felt like Cheska's business was not a sound investment, as it will never be successful and she will never be able to reimburse us. I responded that I disagree and think that she could do it and will ensure I set her up for success. Our arguing lasted for months, and you would constantly tell me how she was going to fail, and that instead of investing this in my own business, I was very irresponsible in supporting her. I then told you that I still did not know what I wanted to do, and maybe in assisting her, I would be inspired. As her business was fully set up, and she has somehow expressed to me that my involvement was causing her distress because she felt abandoned by me when I kicked her out of my studio in NYC back in the days, I then clarified and expressed my perspective of the event to her, see above, and proceeded to let her know that I have no intent in running her business or taking over and kicking her out of it. At that point, I removed myself fully from her business and focused on what I wanted to do for myself. In helping Cheska birth her business and referring to it as her baby, and discovering more about my mom in helping my brother find his own independence, I realized that after 8 years together, I was ready to have a baby. I was always afraid to be a mom because I did not want to cause my kid the same damage as the suicide of my mom caused on me. So instead, you and I were in agreement that we did not want to have children. To my amazement, you were also on board, and I only realized later on that you probably changed your mind because your mom retired and started nagging us about having a kid because all her friends were having grandkids and she was bored out of her mind. I decided to plan a family vacation to Fiji to celebrate the huge news. This created huge disagreements between us, for instead of booking a hotel room, I booked a house for the same price and invited my sisters and brother to tag along. You became resentful and stated that they should contribute to paying for the rental as well. I brought up to your attention that the cost was the same as if we booked just a hotel for ourselves, and that we could invite your sister to tag along so we can spend time with her, given that you always pretended to be close to her and actually never connected with her. You vividly refused and stated that you did not want her around. I then suggested that you could invite your mother, which you accepted. I only realized after she offered to pay for part of the rental cost that you sadly only wanted her around for that purpose, which was fine, for she was the one teaching and enabling you to behave this way. A few weeks after our trip to Fiji, I got pregnant with Anne. At the news, your mom proceeded to call me every day to track the progression of the pregnancy. In expressing to her that it was not necessary to do so, she insisted that it was what other mothers did and she was trying to be kind because I did not have one. I proceeded to tell her that she is free to call you instead every day to ask about the progression of the pregnancy, but this level of superficiality and pretenses did not work for me. She never proceeded to calling you daily. Instead, she proceeded to wanting to plan a baby shower for me, which you told me about later on jokingly by stating that she just could not conceive of anyone not wanting this level of attention, as you informed her that it was not a good idea. She continued to harass us by telling that her friends will want to give us gifts and we should have a gift registry. And I proceeded to explain to her that just like I had informed her on our wedding day, I do not believe in telling people what to give me, for I already had everything I needed. She obnoxiously persisted as usual by stating that people will be buying the same gift, to which I responded that it was none of her business. Then she came back and stated that she wanted to throw a party to introduce our daughter to all her friends, to which I responded that there will be no such thing, and the only people who will have the honor to see our daughter the first year will be her immediate family, and that she was welcome to take a picture with her, with Anne, and share it with her friends instead. Unhappy by my responses, she proceeded to saying that this was not fair to her and that she would be able to throw a party. She should be able to throw a party and invite everyone to meet her granddaughter. In explaining to her that we were advised that babies born in the fall are more susceptible to be exposed to colds, and that many first-time parents make the mistake of unnecessarily expose their babies to germs that can end up killing them, as they do not develop any immunity for the first 6 months of their life, she responded that everyone else was doing it and that I was making a big deal. I again explained that this being my first kid and my abandonment issues being triggered by this possibility of death is what is pushing you and I to make this decision, and that it would be greatly appreciated if she respected our wishes. Again, she kept insisting and pushing and stating that she just wants everyone to know that she has a grandkid because that's what her friends were doing. I then made sure to send her an email specifying that if she continues to trigger us with this, she as well will not be visiting her grandkids. To which she responded that my message was mean and made her cry profusely. I made sure to point out to her that the emotion she felt reading my message is the same she was inflicting on me by not comprehending the level of fear I was facing in learning about all the possible ways my kid can die the first year of her life if I was not careful. In addition to this, we were getting huge arguments because of how you were treating your grandma while she was going through Alzheimer's by profusely screaming at her when she called you by your uncle's name. In trying to explain to you that she was not doing it on purpose and that it was unacceptable that you treat your own grandma this way, you proceeded to say that your mom was screaming at her as well and that it was okay. I then refused to no longer come to dinner with you at her place, for it was getting harder and harder to witness this interaction, for she was one of my most favorite person in your family. You even came home from her place once, laughing about the fact that you made your sister Gina cry because you were screaming at your grandma. Alarmed by how you were treating someone you claimed had unlimited patience towards you in her moment of weakness, I started making sure to protect myself by shouting my boundaries out loud and clear to you. 8 months into my pregnancy, I had a huge panic attack and asked you to not go racing that Saturday because I was being faced with the fear that I will hurt my kid just like my mom did. I cried and begged you to please stay with me. I wasn't quite sure what was happening to me, and it had something to do with, and if it had something to do with my hormones, but the fear was so intense that I was afraid to be alone. I had never asked you anything throughout the whole pregnancy and was shocked to hear that you couldn't do it because you already made plans with a friend to go racing with you. In kneeling and begging you to please stay with me, something was happening inside and I seemed very afraid. But you proceeded to walk out on me and return home with my favorite dinner to make up for leaving me on my own that day. The day I gave birth to Anne, you proceeded to leaving me in the hospital on my own after my C-section because you had to go racing the next day, and proceeded to return the next day in the evening after your race, and in watching me struggle to stand to change Anne's diaper and feed her, complained that you were too tired to stay with me in the hospital and will be heading home to sleep. I exploded and it's sure to make it clear to you that you will stick around and take care of your daughter together with me. In watching you avoid assisting me with Anne, our arguments became more aggressive. Throughout the first year, you will leave me off on weekends to go racing, will come back home after work to lock yourself in a bathroom for almost an hour to watch porn and masturbate, pretending to take the number 2. Seeing that I was beyond exhausted and needed a rest, your behavior was so unacceptable that even your mom stepped in to ask you to take time off from racing. By year 2 or 3, Anne would refuse to be taken by you at times and would profusely cry when she was left alone with you. My exhaustion was getting deeper and deeper, and my emotional outbursts were getting more severe. The last drop was when Anne was 3 years old and we were in the park with a couple of other parents, and in swinging herself on a slide, she fell. In comforting her, she started screaming every time we touched her arm. She expressed severe pain on her arm and did not want any of us to touch it. Alarmed by this observation, I asked her if she could move her arm, and she screamed in tears that it hurt. You proceeded to tell her that she was exaggerating and that she should stop crying because it was just a little fall. In watching the way she kept screaming every time you touched her arm, I told you to stop touching her and that something was not right and we should take her to the hospital. You continued by insisting that I did not understand what was happening and that Anne was just being dramatic, and proceeded to continue moving and even yelling at her for screaming her pain. At that point, I stepped in and made sure to convey to you that if you touch her one more time, you will be the one getting injured by me. As you noticed that everyone on the playground was now alarmed by my rage, you proceeded to walk away and get the car. so we can head to the hospital. Holding Anne the whole way to the hospital and ensuring that she was comforted and safe, we arrived at the nearest hospital to find that she had dislocated her elbow in swinging herself. The doctor taught you how to deal with it in the future, and Anne felt better. After this experience, you and I started getting more physical with each other. I would get enraged and you will refuse to let me leave the room by blocking me with your body, triggering me, and I would react with slaps, scratches, and pulling on your shirts and scratching you, and you will punch me and give me black eyes. You will then take pictures of scratches that I've made to you and will show them to me as I put on makeup on my black eye to drop Anne off at school. As I would decide to file for a divorce, you will proceed to threaten to kill you yourself and tell me how much you care for me. All this has been witnessed by your mom. One of the days you gave me a black eye and kept taunting me. I told you that if you did not call your mom so you can calm down, I will be calling the cops on you. Your mom showed up that night and slept over. She would constantly tell us that we should not be married and that considering a divorce should be the healthiest option, not knowing that I have been trying to do this for years. I had no one to talk to. Your tricks were so efficient that everyone thought you were a very nice guy and that I was the one being mean to you. That's when I started telling you that I will sleep around so you can let me go. Amused by this statement, you will proceed to tell me that I could not even stand men and that I will never be able to do so. Tom was the first person I felt a level of attraction to, as you recall. He was one of Anne's gymnastic coach, and I tried to tell you that I was attracted to her, and wanted a divorce, or I will be sleeping with her. Amused by this, for you clearly saw that I was not in love with her. A few years later, after our continuing physical fight, sometimes even in front of Anne, and all this witnessed by your mom, who will continue to validate and enable you. Anne started showing various distress signals, at times profusely crying because she did not wipe herself well and left a stain in her underwear. I will find her in the bathroom shaking on the floor, trying to hide her underwears because she did not want you to see it. In explaining to her that she did nothing wrong and that this was normal, for it will take a little bit of practice, she will break down crying that you screamed at her about it and when I was not around. In confronting you with this, you will state that she misunderstood you. The same behavior will surface when I sent you both to the park alone so I can clean the house. And she will return crying, stating that you hurt her by pushing her on the bicycle and she got hurt. Until today, at 10 years old, she still refuses to learn to ride a bike. All these experiences were triggering me so much that I started numbing myself with alcohol and drinking myself to sleep. I felt so trapped. At times, I even called the cops because I was so distressed and felt severe panic in watching how they dealt with you. In December 2019, we went through another physical fight and you wrestled me to the ground and tried to suffocate me on the floor. As I barely fought my way out of this, I told you that I had reached my limit and will not continue another year. After 15 years with you, I still was not in love with you and wanted out. You told me that I I was not trying hard enough, and that when we will retire and have enough savings, we will have enough time to fall in love. You begged me and stated that you would like me to give you one last chance if I agreed to go to couple therapies with you, to which I stated that I would do. I then told you that in order for me to commit for good to this relationship, I needed the opportunity to have the option of sleeping with another man. As you were still pretty addicted to porn, that was my way of balancing out the scales. You proceeded to laugh and were amused by my statement. There was no way for me to even be attracted to another man. Still, I wanted the option. You agreed. Early 2020, I reached out to Derek and asked him for his help in helping me in getting out of my marriage by sleeping with me. He agreed. I had none of our interactions with you. As COVID hit in March and Anne had to be homeschooled, I reached out to you and expressed to you that the homeschooling was overwhelming me, as it was bringing up some childhood trauma regarding school and how children were forced to memorize things. And I needed you to stay home at least one day a week to step in, to which you refused profusely, only to tell me the following year that you were forced by work to take a day off for the remainder of the year to use all your vacation days. Next, as my brother reached out to me for help in buying him a flight ticket of $200 so he can travel to find a better job, for he has lost his work during COVID, you argued with me that I should not help him and that he should have been left to fend for himself. By May 2020, you took my phone, transferred all my WhatsApp conversation with Derek, and translated it to English, and confronted me with it, and told me that I was trying to sleep with him. I told you that I wanted a divorce and that you can prevent it any time by agreeing to use a mediator to get things moving. You stated that I promised to go to couples therapy with you, to which I pointed out that 5 months have passed since our talk about it, and still you had taken no action. You stated that you will get to it. I then went to Benin and met Derek and slept with him. Him being my first boyfriend and the only man I have ever fell in love with, gave me the push I needed to go through it. As you picked me up from the airport and greeted me with a large bottle of vodka, ensuring to keep enabling my drinking to keep me around, I expressed to you that I have reconnected with Derek in Benin and slept with him and wanted a divorce for good this time. I informed you that I will look for a lawyer first thing the next week. You told me that you will kill yourself, to which I responded this time that just like I have survived my mom's suicide, Anne will survive yours. For ultimately, it is your choice to decide whether you wanted to leave or not. You then conceded to the divorce and asked me to give you a couple of weeks to process it, and then we could both email our families together to notify them. As we drove upstate the next day to pick Anne up from your mom's place, you proceeded to drive over 90 miles an hour on the highway, stating that you will kill the both of us on the road. Sensing your control and distress, I calmly touched your arm and told you that I cared for you, and that my intention was not to hurt you, and that we would always be a family, for you were the father of my daughter. And we should calm down and talk about it at home. You stated that I promised to go to couples therapy, to which I responded that we were at the end of August and still you had taken no step in finding a therapist, since you talked about it the prior year. As we returned home with Neta and the first week was coming to an end, you noticed that I had not touched the vodka bottle that you've purchased. I no longer had any desire to numb myself with alcohol, and and soon discovered that I was pregnant. A couple of days before the 2 weeks period, you asked you asked for to you you asked for to process the divorce news. You barged in at home as I was setting Neta up for lunch and started screaming that I was pregnant and cheated on you. Confused by your anger, I brought Anne to the basement to finish her lunch and turn on the TV so she cannot hear our conversation. As I came back up, you proceeded to chase me around the kitchen island and told me for a second time that you were going to kill me for good this time. In expressing to you that I had just discovered myself a couple of days prior, the fact that I was pregnant, and that it changed nothing about the fact that we're going to notify our family of the news of our divorce. You continued the chase, and I grabbed the phone and started to dial 911, but instead stopped myself and called your mom to tell her that you were threatening to kill me and that I was frightened, and she had 5 minutes to do something about it before I actually called the cops. After you expressed to her that I have cheated on you and got pregnant in the process, I corrected your statement by adding that I did not cheat because you gave me your permission to do so, and that we had already agreed to sit with a mediator in a couple of days to discuss our divorce procedures and notify our family together. Your mom just casually responded that of course I will not keep the baby and will be getting an abortion. Outraged by that statement, as the news of having Derek's baby was the best thing that could have happened to me. I proceeded to tell her that neither her nor you have a say on the very precious gift I was carrying. Unfortunately, the severe shock of these experiences destabilized me. A few days after that, I was having extreme cramps and was taken to the emergency room to find out that I had an ectopic pregnancy, which ruptured my right ovary and created an internal bleeding which could have killed me if I had waited any longer. You then came to the hospital to inform me that your mom has asked one of her friends to mediate our divorce and had notified your side of the family about our divorce by telling everyone that I have cheated on you and were therefore getting divorced. Angered by this manipulation, I asked you to leave my hospital room in anger and proceeded to inform my family of the news on my own. As I returned home from the hospital, you stated that I would not take the house because your mom was the one who bought it for you, even though you were against us buying this place in the first place. To which I responded that I had no objection to it, for I will take nothing, I will not take anything that was not given to me with love. I can always buy myself another house. You proceeded to tell me afterward that you wanted to keep the house for Anne, to which my response remained the same, although the latter was a more honorable approach. The divorce took place, and you soon informed me that you got a substantial raise and bonus at work, and that I should have divorced you earlier. Reassured by this, I was able to focus on finding a job and reviving my career. Anne was so excited by the news of our divorce that she started jumping up and down in excitement at the news of having a place just for her and I, and started packing a suitcase right away and ensured to notify her whole class about the wonderful news. Your mom at that point called me at the news of me going to Benin prior to moving out, and as she was telling me her thoughts on the matter, I proceeded to let her know that I do not have to discuss anything regarding how you and I decide to navigate this process together. She then proceeded to scream at me and told me that I was mean and had always screamed at you and that I can no longer get away with it. I then calmly responded that she should no longer contact me going forward, and if she had any comments going forward, she should address them directly with you, for I was living with my head held high. She proceeded to tell me that she as well was living with her head held high, to which I replied that she was not the one I was married to. Soon after the divorce, you started saying that even though we were divorced, we could sleep together and help each other out in that way. I casually brushed you off and told you that you should start dating and move on. You will then proceed to call me at work to tell me that you've read that women my age have a hard time finding a partner after a divorce, while men your age had an easier time because they were more stable in their career and financially. I had then told you to never call me at work regarding this again. As I tried to work together after the divorce with you by eating dinners together and going to birthday parties together, your constant harassment in trying to convince me to help each other by sleeping with you while you can assist me with other things, I continue to ask you to revert back to your porn as you so profusely did during our marriage. As you noticed things with Derek were getting a bit scary, I faltered and slept with you, only to realize the mistake that I made and told you that it will never happen again. You then retaliated and made sure to make things as hard as possible for me and reignited the same manipulations as during our marriage by trying to portray to everyone that I was doing things out of resentment towards you. This pushed me to start putting everything in writing to protect myself. In focusing on reviving my career after 8 years and making sure that Anne was emotionally stable throughout the transition, I started observing how you were starting to taunt me and create emotional distress on my end, enabled by both my sisters who throughout this overwhelming transition ensured to